I mean, I could see the whole face, and it was kind of, well, it just caught me off guard because it felt like it was looking straight into my soul. And it kind of took a second to register with me what I was looking at. It knew that I saw it. Oh. It was scary looking eyes. It would be, like if you turn on a werewolf movie, that werewolf looking in the window type of thing. It was those kind of eyes. After seeing what I saw, I wouldn't feel safe with just a crossbow when I was near it.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Monster 911. If you're new to the channel, my name's Lance. I travel, interview, and investigate all over the country, exposing a truth and giving a voice to courageous eyewitnesses who have experienced the unimaginable, the existence of paranormal entities, creatures that are very much alive in isolated areas across the U.S. Now, before we get going here, if you will allow me just a couple of minutes, I want to go over a couple of things before we get to the story. First off, I want to say, guys, thank you so much. I have about a 98 to 99% like rate to every show that I've produced since December. That's incredible. And the share rate is also off the charts. So you guys are making this happen. I sincerely appreciate you guys more than you'll ever know. And I'm glad for the comments, so please keep them coming. The second thing is very simple. If many of you that are watching the show right now, 65 to 70% of you are not subscribed yet. So if you will do me a simple favor, I'll return one. So what I mean by that is that if you'll just go ahead and subscribe, that way you don't miss any shows when they come out. Then as I grow, and my goal is to hit 50,000 within the next month, and by July and August of this year, 2025, to hit 100,000. But I can't get there without you. So if you're watching, take just a second or two to hit the subscribe button, and if you like a show, like it, and then if you really like it, share it. That's all. It costs nothing to do that, and I would sincerely appreciate it. When I hit the 100,000 mark, that's when I want to give subscriber giveaways. I'm not there yet, and I can't do that yet. So when we get there, I'm going to have subscriber giveaways. I won't let the cat out of the bag what they are. But you know me from the past as Cryptid Brothers, I like giveaways. In addition, I'd like to take some of you on some trips where we can co-investigate. That's just a little of the ideas that I have for my subscriber base. I want this to be a show that you can be proud of, that you feel involved with, where you want me to go next. But to get there, I've got to grow. And then again, if you'll subscribe, I would really sincerely appreciate that. Today's show is an interesting show. This gentleman, Steve is his name, is a good friend. We actually met about 15 or so years ago through a mutual friend. And I would see him every once in a while. We didn't hang out a lot, but we were very cordial to each other through our mutual friend. And one day I got a call from Steve and he said, "Lance, we have to talk." And I'm like, okay. He never calls me and says that. So I met him at his house. He lives not too far from me as a crow flies, so I went to his house, and this was in the summertime. We got in the Jeep, and we drove out his property and got onto a rural paved road, which I've been on many, many times. And he's describing what he saw this past week, or during that time. This was in 2016, what he saw during the past week. And he said that there was a particular spot that he always looks for deer. And there's usually a herd of deer, not only in the ditch off to the sides of this paved road, but out in the field. And he always likes to just kind of take a quick look out there and just look at the deer and just appreciate the deer kind of feeding. Well, as he came up on this spot, he did so, and he was looking, saw the deer on the other side of this fence, didn't think anything of it, and then something caught his eye in the peripheral vision that didn't look right. He thought he saw was a cedar tree. Unfortunately, this cedar tree had eyes. Go into that day of when you were coming home and what you observed and all the details, if you can recall them, and what you saw, size, color, and all those things, and then we'll just go from there.
Okay. Well, I wasn't out looking for anything. I was just actually, I was driving into Cleveland from my house, and I think, I was in my dad's Buick, just driving along the road on Prue Road, looking at the beautiful scenery.
What year was this?
2016,
16.
I think.
Yeah, that's what.
16
okay.
or 17, right around
Okay.
there. And beautiful later in the day, getting to be dusk, just as, deer start getting out. So I was really watching for deer, and I was going by some friends of mine's property, and I noticed 3 or 4 deer standing on the other side of the road. So I was checking them out because, it's not far from where my hunting blind is on my property.
Oh, okay.
And I'm just looking at them. I'm not going very fast because I like to see what's out there and stuff. And I'm looking at the deer, kind of checking them out, looking for a nice big buck or something like that. And out of the corner of my eye, I just saw something. And as I looked over, and that's probably going about 45 miles an hour, 40, 45.
So you're traveling down your highway.
Yeah, down the little country road.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And I look over, and there was a bunch of cedar trees that were on the other side of the road, kind of the reddish cedar trees as they start to die off color.
Oh, yeah.
So I look over, and all of a sudden that cedar tree had a face, had eyes, had teeth. I mean, I could see the whole face. And it was kind of, it just caught me off guard because it felt like it was looking straight into my soul, the way it was looking at me. It was just, you know how you see the werewolves on movies, those bloody kind of scary looking eyes, but it wasn't moving. It was perfectly still.
Now, you told me, with that being said, and correct me if I'm wrong, in going back when we first spoke, now it's been a while since we've talked about this, of course, but you said it was sitting like on its haunches.
Just like a dog.
Just like a dog would, but
the enormity, the size, with it still sitting on its haunches, you told me, and we've got a very good friend, your neighbor.
Yep.
You said that it was taller than your neighbor.
Yeah, I think he's what, 6'2",
6'2".
But that was sitting down the pointy part of its ears, because it had ears. You know, it looked like kind of like a German Shepherd. You know how a German Shepherd sits perfectly still,
right?
But the colors were almost exactly the same as the cedar tree. It kind of reminded me of the last mule deer I got in Utah. I got out of my vehicle and I walked over to a fence post, and it acted like I didn't see it. It sat perfectly still, didn't flinch, didn't flicker an ear or anything. So it was hiding. It's a way of hiding. It's kind of, you know, the fawns hide out in the woods. They'll be in a bush, you'll walk right by them, and all of a sudden there's a little fawn there. You try not to make eye contact with them if you don't want to spook them.
So let me make sure. So where you're at, you're in your car, you're on a blacktop road going home from Cleveland, and the road's out
Actually,
there.
I was going to Cleveland.
Oh,
from
to
home.
Cleveland,
Yeah.
Pardon me. And this was daytime.
Getting about this time of day.
But you can still see everything clearly.
Beautiful, clear day.
How close?
My windows were open.
Oh, your windows were open.
Oh, yeah. That's how nice a day it was.
Oh. So you're driving, you see the deer, then you take a second glance to your right.
Yeah, because the deer were to my left.
Oh, okay.
There's kind of a little meadow across the street. Because their gate is probably, I just went past their gate, and there were some cedar trees on either side of their gate. Wild growing cedar trees. They weren't planted or anything.
Okay, right.
And I just, my mind saw another cedar tree till I looked over and realized it had a face. You know how you look at something, you just assume, you know, peripheral vision, you assume it's what you think it would be. But then I realized it was not what I thought it was. And the deer didn't even know it was there. They weren't looking at it. They were just grazing. They had no idea it was sitting there.
How close? Well, two things. How close were you when you took this glance? You realized this tree had a face. And how close were the deer to this canine creature?
The deer were 50 to 60 yards away across the road.
Okay.
And I was traveling about 40, 45 miles an hour. So I was looking at the deer, and when I looked back over, I would say, I'm trying to figure out how fast, it was only like 15, 20 yards off the road. Oh, but I was approaching it when I first saw it. Okay. And then when I looked back, I tried to look back, but it's a narrow, windy road. You can't just, and I didn't want to stop. It gave me a feeling I didn't want to stop. You know, I had my windows open. I was moving. Granted, I had a gun with me, but, you know, I've hit a hog on the same road. And by the time I got out, it was gone. So, you know, it was not something I could have reached and felt comfortable with my gun. Plus, I don't even know. I don't have like a 9 or a 45 with me. I don't know that I've been effective on something that big.
So when you saw this and you realized this tree had a face, and it was sitting on its haunches like a dog would.
Just like a dog.
With its hindquarters sitting on the ground, and its two front, I am envisioning, its front torso, its legs, its arms or legs are down in front of it, possibly. I know you have various pets, and you've had a Mastiff before, and you know sizes of animals and cattle and goats and everything. You live out in the country like I do. Can you give an estimate on, you said it's over 6 foot sitting down.
The top of its ears, yeah.
How much do you think you guesstimate of weight?
It had to be 300 pounds, 400 pounds.
Okay.
That big, it'd have to be. My Mastiff's 150 pounds, and when he sits down, he only came to like my chest.
But this thing was really...
Oh, this thing was taller than I was standing. It was sitting on its haunches.
So give me a description of...
And there were other cedars there, so it blended in with the other cedars at the same time.
Interesting.
But it was only cedar with a face. and really, really intense looking eyes. The eyes are what got me.
Yeah, tell me about the eyes and the rest of the features.
Well, the eyes were definitely bloodshot. I mean, it just looked like a a lot of predators, you know, when they're watching something, it just had that intense stare that you see on predators and that, and it was just stare. And when it looked at me, I felt weird. I mean, it looked straight into me.
Really?
Like it knew exactly. It knew that I saw it because we made eye contact. So it's like a pedestrian on the side of the road. You know, when you slow down or when you see them, you make eye contact. You might wave to somebody or something like that.
Right.
But this thing made eye contact. Now, it didn't wave to me or nothing, but
right. Yeah. Well, you know, a lot of people that I've interviewed state that when they do have close encounter, and that's what I'm really calling this, they state inevitably, almost all of them, when they have a close encounter with this dogman creature is what I'm calling it at this point, they always state they could tell it was thinking.
Oh,
it almost had a sense like it, in the eyes, it was thinking something, and that it was also at the same time giving a message.
You know, and I kind of had that feeling that you don't see me message. Like it was trying to tell me you don't really see me. That's kind of how it felt. And it's narrow road right there. So I had to go around the corner to find a driveway. I turned around and went back.
Tell me about that.
It was gone. The deer were still on the other side of the road and it was gone.
So the deer had no clue.
The deer didn't even move. They were still grazing. Now, I spooked them when I turned around, you know, when I was coming back.
You know, I was trying to recall too, you said, and again, correct me, that when you came upon these deer, I'm trying to recall that you said that there was a larger group of deer out in the pasture, but there was one that was isolated in the ditch. Am I recalling that right? Or
I don't remember that. I mean, they were grouped together, but they were separate. But they weren't. You know how deer get when you know they perk up and their ears go up,
very attentive,
and they think there's something. You know, a lot of times they don't move, but they perk up and they stiffen in their eyes and their ears. They weren't doing any of that. You know, they were off on the side. You know, Prue Road, I'll probably see 5-6 deer tonight on my way home, grazing off the side of Prue Road in those same fields.
You know, for deer, and you and I have hunted deer a long time. For something so large, how can it be so stealth?
It blended in. I mean, it knew how to blend in with those other cedar trees.
Wow.
Because, I mean, the scariest part about that to me is how many times have I walked past something like that or rode my mountain bike or my dirt bike or my quad right past something like that and never saw it.
I can imagine hiking on that highway.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Luckily, nobody walks on that road. Well, not very often.
Yeah. Well, there's no shoulder on it.
No. I don't even like riding a bicycle on it.
No. So had you heard about this creature before, Dogman creature or anything? I mean, you and I, we had talked about, you watch a lot of YouTube. My wife and I do too. But had you heard about this creature? I mean, you've never seen anything like this before.
No. I've always been super interested, being from rural Northern California and living in Alaska and stuff like that. Always been really interested in Bigfoot. But I never really thought about Dogman, or I'd call it a werewolf kind of creatures. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've always loved those kind of movies. That's kind of one of the genres I like and stuff. But I'd never expected to see one on Prue Road. You know, I never expected to see something like that. I mean, I wasn't really looking. I mean, it's not like I was out.
It just happened.
Yeah.
Do you think when you saw this, and you said it was kind of the color like the cedars when they kind of go dead? Is that what you said? That's interesting, because I originally thought it was black, but you're saying it was more of a...
Well, it was it had the cedars in the background, so it had green cedars and some red cedars and some shadows.
Okay.
And it had to have known how to make itself look like that. I'm
sure it did, which is scary with intellect like that. So I'm still fascinated with the size of this thing and any type of characteristics you saw. So you said, did the ears point up?
Yes, just like a German Shepherd.
And they were really
were pretty long.
How tall?
I would say 6 inches.
Wow. And the eye color, I didn't quite catch it.
It was a reddish, almost looked bloodshot red.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
It was scary looking eyes. It would be, you know, like if you turn on a werewolf movie, that werewolf looking in the window type of thing. It was those kind of eyes.
How did the facial features look? Did it look
really canine?
Very canine?
Very canine, almost wolfish.
Long snout?
Long snout, very canine. Didn't have any man-like features.
No man-like features at all?
No, I didn't see arms like
shoulders
like a man. It had kind of narrow shoulders, or else it was shrugging its shoulders or something.
Tucked in or something.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah. I mean, it looked exactly like if a beautiful German Shepherd was posing in front of you sitting, like they would pose, or those statues you see of people that have a dog and their feet are right in front of it and their legs come up and the feet go down. I mean, it looked perfect. It was just right there. I mean, I didn't get a lot of details on the body because, 45 miles an hour going by.
Sure.
My biggest thing was the contact with the face. And then when I came back, that cedar wasn't where it was at when I came back.
The cedar tree wasn't a cedar tree.
No, it was gone.
You said you saw teeth. Tell me about the teeth.
It was just like, a dog's teeth just kind of hang out a little bit of their mouth. It wasn't like it growled at me. It didn't make any, the only thing that followed me was its eyes, and that was it. Its eyes followed me. It didn't even move its head that I saw.
So was its face tucked a little bit, tucked down?
Yes.
It was tucked down. So its muzzle was tucked down just a little bit.
Yeah, it was trying to blend in. It was very obviously, I didn't see it. I mean, I was focused on the deer on the other side, and I just casually looked up, because you're always scanning the road. When there's deer on this side of the road, there could be a couple deer running from the other side. I don't want to hit a deer. So.
And then when you saw this and you went, what the heck probably did I see? You went down the hill a little ways.
Yeah, just around the corner. There's a driveway around the corner. I turned around and hit.
Take it from there.
Well, I just came back, and I think if I remember correctly, I rolled my windows up because it gave me the willies. It definitely gave me the willies.
Yeah.
But I wanted to see it. I really wanted to see it. But I didn't want to stop when I first saw it. I just did not want to stop at first. And it kind of took a second to register with me what I was looking at. Now you see something and, it's not where it's supposed to be. I'm not expecting, it's not like at a baseball game seeing a baseball. It's in the woods, and it was, I'd never seen anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like my brother said on the last show, where my brother Lane, I did an interview with him, you may have seen, is that my brother, his encounter in 95, he said just a flood of questions are like a fire hose coming at your brain, and you're trying to disseminate not only what did I see, why did I see it, what's it doing here? I mean, just question after question after question, just bombarding your brain. But at the same time, with that being said, there's an inquisitive aspect, a mysterious aspect that draws you back, but yet part of you goes, are you silly? Are you crazy? Don't go back. So it's this inner battle that you're having psychologically with yourself. And, some people would say what you saw was just a big dog. What do you say to that?
Not that big. I mean, my Mastiff was 150 pounds, and this thing dwarfed. I mean, had mistaken a cedar tree for it. So it was, they're little bitty cedar trees, yes, but this was kind of a Christmas tree shaped look.
Wow. And the cedar trees out here grow everywhere.
Oh, they're all over.
No matter what size they are, they're usually big at the bottom, and the branches go all the way to if they're wild, of course, and no one really prunes the trees, they're all the way to the ground, the branches, the limbs, and they're big at the bottom, and then they go all the way to a point, no matter what size they are.
And some of them are bulbous, but this one wasn't. Some of them were kind of straight like a Christmas tree shape.
And this one just blended right in with the other trees.
Oh, yeah. Wow. It's like, did you see that tree? Which tree? There's trees everywhere, but that it just.
Now, are you familiar? And this is after, probably a day after is when you contacted me. You said, Lance, we got to talk. And then that's when you explained to me what you saw and where you saw it. In fact, you took me there, I think.
Yeah, we went over there.
And I never forgot that. And you showed me where the deer were at. And, but I was trying to recall when you saw this canine creature, was it on that fence side, or
Yes.
was it across the...
Well, there's fence on both sides.
Right.
But it was on the side with the gate.
With the gate. Okay, I know what you're talking about. That's what I thought where it was at.
That was part of there's a giant ranch, a couple 1,000-acre ranch over there owned by a big rancher. And that's the old ranch hand's house. When he retired, they gave him some of the property.
Okay.
So that's how I know the folks that live there.
Okay.
But their house is back and down. It's not right by the road or anything. It's kind of like your house. It's about as far away from the road as your house.
Okay.
Is. So this thing would have been like being at your driveway.
I remember seeing it now. Do you recall what's interesting about your sighting? In 2016, there was a rash of other sightings, not only in the area where you live, but there were sightings by your neighbor, our friend, and by other people in the surrounding Tulsa and in the Tulsa area in 2016. So something has some level, something was going on in 2016. I think it was a little odd. I'm not saying that you can't see them outside of that year, but for whatever reason, I was getting call after call after call in 2016.
Up in this area?
Up in this area and on the east side of Tulsa, as far as the Verdigris River, and in Tulsa, on the turnpikes, in Sapulpa, in Sand Springs, and in surrounding little communities outside of, just on the edge of Tulsa. Skiatook, another place. But it was all, and I remember the year was 2016. And I remember even a couple calls came to me in Broken Arrow. Wow. Now it is technically in Broken Arrow, but still in the
out there
fringe part of Broken Arrow, in the eastern, southeastern kind of, where it's definitely Broken Arrow. You think, well, that's city. Well, not all of it. It's still country. And this occurred in a housing addition where two different people, not related, saw probably the same creature because they both described the same color. So I don't know if you're aware of your neighbor sightings that they had.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
We talked about it afterwards.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, after we talked.
So it was interesting what they saw. They had the wife of your neighbor. I spoke to her, and she was, her and her husband were coming up the driveway, and he was looking off to the wood pile, and she was looking straight up the drive when she saw something, two large somethings, boom, boom, jet across their driveway up ahead, which is just a dirt road like most of us have, a gravel dirt road. And they had just put a pond in, and it was these two large animals, creatures, were coming from their pond, going to the other side of the road. I mean, it was super fast, boom, boom. And she thought, based on the size, they were calves. But she said, calves don't move that fast. And that's what struck her odd. And that the one thing I asked her, and she's a very tall lady, and I asked her about where the height would be, and she used her right hand and used her chest height. And so that would be about, honestly, my height on the wither or the back. That's huge on four legs.
Which, if you took this creature that I saw and put it on four legs, that'd be what I'd estimate the height. That'd probably been right about here to me if it was on four legs. Wow. But sitting upright, it was really long. And I've gotten my hunting blinds up there in that 28 acres on the north side of my property, up towards the people you're talking about. I have a hunting blind up there, and I keep a deer camera on it. And I got a picture of a mountain lion up there. And it's funny because the mountain lion was standing exactly where I parked my Jeep Wrangler, and it was as long as my Jeep Wrangler, the mountain lion. So it was a big mountain lion.
Yeah.
And I showed it to Fish and Game, and Fish and Game said it's the first one they've had reported in 7 years in our county.
I wonder. And I wondered too. I mean,
But that was about 5 years since then that I saw the mountain lion.
Okay. I'm of the belief that I tell people when they see these creatures, don't say anything to the Fish and Game.
Oh, I haven't said anything about this.
Because now indigenous creatures, that's different.
Yeah, I told them about the mountain lion.
But what I'm afraid of is that when people do that, years later, it's no big deal, I think. But at that moment, I think it puts you on radar. And with that being said, that kind of segues into what I want to ask you next. And I asked you when you spoke to me in 2016, I asked you, and maybe I waited a couple months or something, or a couple weeks. I said, have you seen any odd trucks or drones in the area?
Oh, yeah.
Remember I asked you that and
Yes.
what you told me?
Yeah.
What'd you say?
Well, I've had 2 incidents. One was, a small fleet, like 4 or 5 SUVs, the same color, Suburbans, dark colored Suburbans driving through that area. It was about the same time. And then when I was coming back from our other friends that live out by Boston Pools, you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
I was coming back. It was a really windy day. And right above the power lines, I saw what looked like a drone. And back then, none of our drones could fly. We're talking probably gusts 30-mile-an-hour winds. And that drone was just above the power lines, and it flew on by. And it was going fast. It was on dirt road, so I'm not going very fast. But I saw it out there by Boston Pools. And that was around the same time. because I was out doing a lot of hog hunting out there on their property.
Now, I know power line survey. I mean, I know the power people, they use drone. Do you think it was surveying the power?
No, this is end of the day. I've just been hog hunting and, left by the end of the day. It was actually just after sunset. So the sun was kind of going down. It had lights on it.
Oh, it did?
It had lights like a commercial drone, but I've seen, my company has commercial drones, and
it just was out of place.
Yeah, well, it really didn't look out of place till I realized how hard that wind was blowing, and our drones can't fly in that stuff, and they're very expensive drones.
Mine definitely.
That's what threw me off. It's kind of like that. I'm going, wait a minute, there shouldn't be a drone out here on a windy day like this. And it wasn't the big giant lines. So the big lines, those big transfer lines, they fly helicopters along those. They come through that area all the time, and helicopters. They don't use drones much on those. I mean, they might now with the new, better drones.
So did you, when you saw those 4 SUVs, how soon after your sighting did you see those? How many weeks or months?
I was within a month or 2.
And
we'd seen them a couple times out in that area.
Were they all following each other?
Yeah, they were like a little convoy,
Really?
3 or 4 of them.
Were they ever pulled off on the side of the road, or do you just see them always on the hard blacktop roads? Or
they were always on the blacktops. I mean, it's so easy if you pull off the road there not to see a car.
Right.
You can go into one of the pump jacks or something like that and not be seen. So there was a couple of us talking about that at the time. Now, also at the time, I'm going to say the one subdivision to the west, east of me, and I'm talking miles to the east, was known for having drugs and stuff there. So they might have been a drug enforcement folks. I don't know. But usually they're in sheriff's vehicles or something like that.
I was going to say.
These were unmarked SUVs. And the funny thing is we've seen them in black and white.
Which, and again, I know this is going to sound speculative, but Suburbans historically have been affiliated with this unknown group of people that, and I'm going to use some of Dr. Greer's terminology, where he calls them kind of the spooks, or a corporate spook is what I'm going to add to it, where it's not, I don't believe personally, my opinion is that it is a U.S. Government agency, so to speak, but I believe that it is U.S. directed that formed this NGO, this non-governmental organization or contracted group that has known about these creatures for a very long time. How long, I'm not sure, but they're working to actively suppress the information and to keep this information quiet, keeping secret, and that they actively look for this creature as well as many other types of paranormal type of entities, or what we would call creatures or beings, in my opinion. That includes not only Sasquatch, but a whole host of other things, that they actively pursue them and try to capture them. What they do at that point, we don't know. We can only speculate. But this group is so well documented with many of the people I've interviewed that it's more than just a coincidence. It's more than just one or two people and you have interviewed. I've interviewed over 1,200 people, and I've got dozens and dozens of people that are unrelated, different places of the country, having encountered these people in vehicles very, very similar to what you just said.
Well, there's not a lot of traffic out where we're at. And a lot of the traffic we know because it's people we see and know. So it's not a lot of, I mean, yeah, beautiful days. People come out there in their Harleys.
Oh, sure. But it's rare for vehicles.
Yeah, not in a group like that.
Not in a group.
You know?
And I actually have been able to, I know a couple people that work in these drug task force, and there may be undercover vehicles, absolutely.
But they're not
all the same color.
Yeah,
and
blacked out windows.
Exactly.
But they didn't have government plates because I would have noticed that.
Right. And so I think personally that is something that they've gotten smart about, that they'll usually have vehicles tagged in the state that they're investigating, and or that they're renting vehicles that they rent now. So they want the same color, or they want to blend in somewhat. So white, reds, blacks. Black is very common, of course, but reds and blacks, and then various different types of cars too. Mini Coopers, sedans, 4x4 trucks, 4-door trucks, 2-door are very common now. Vans, that's one that's definitely going to stick out. So they try to go with something that doesn't. Suburbans are very common in Oklahoma, but 4 of them, that's too coincidental.
Yeah.
So I remember the look on your face when I asked you about if you've seen any vehicles around, and you kind of had like, yeah, I have. Matter of fact, and then you told me about the drone too. So your neighbor, our friends, they had, that I can recall, the wife saw those 2, very large. Their son-in-law he had a sighting.
That's right.
He said it was the fastest thing he ever saw on 4 legs, and it hopped over that 5-strand barbed wire fence on their property like it wasn't even there. Then their daughter had a nighttime sighting, and then the wife, again, had a daytime sighting close to your place.
Oh, I remember hearing about that.
And except that was a different color. What stuck out during that daytime sighting was the shininess, or the shiny, oily or glistening aspect of the fur or its hair as it turned and bolted and went over a little hill. And that was down where that little bridge creek is.
Just blow my hunt blind down.
Yeah, just past. There was a little sand hill right there up on that pond.
Yep.
And that's where she saw it whipped around. It was black, and the light hit it in such a way the sun just shined off its hair, and she thought it looked oily or wet.
Wow.
That's how it caught her eye. She goes, I don't know what it was, but it was large, and it wasn't cattle don't look that way, obviously.
No.
And so they had quite a few sightings, and that was all in 2016. And I remember too that I think your neighbor had a sighting by his woodpile.
I know that
Because
wood pile well. I've got a lot of wood out of that.
because that's where they were during deer season. They throw the deer carcasses down there, and there was a pile and those saplings down there. So I'm sure that got the smelling
Oh yeah.
quite far. But I think that's where they were going.
It's funny when you mentioned the hair. It made me recall something about my sighting.
Yeah,
you know
please.
how a dog will puff up its hair when it's its hair was like fur was like that. It wasn't laying down smooth because it would have stood out.
Oh,
It
so
had
it
its
was
hair all up like a
really
tense dog, but it didn't look angry like it was ready to growl. It didn't look like it was going to growl or snarl, but its hair was puffy, kind of like you just blow dried your dog. Or something like that.
So it was really fluffed out.
Yeah.
Oh, I can see why it would be difficult to see that.
As soon as you said something about hair, I go, oh yeah, and it was furry, puff fur.
I wonder if it can control the hair to do that, being not angry or anything. But who knows? Maybe
It didn't have its teeth. It wasn't showing its teeth. You
Right.
could see its canines, but
maybe its hackles were maybe the hair everywhere, because domesticated dogs, when it's we call it the hackles. When it usually it'll get that ridge line from the back of their neck down their back.
but they're usually growling. Now I
Usually
usually hear
growling. Yeah, my dogs do that. They're usually
But if it had been growling, the deer would have heard it.
right. Interesting. Very fascinating characteristic. So have you seen anything since that time around down that road?
A few mountain lions and wild pigs,
But nothing like that.
Nothing like that. Now we've had a couple of the same year. We had an experience where we were sitting there, having wife and I a beautiful morning, sitting there, and we have all the windows open in the house, and you hear coyotes all the time, but all of a sudden we heard a wolf because it was different. It was deeper, more guttural. Turns out our other neighbor on the other side actually owned a wolf at that time. He had it pinned up. After you're familiar with the incident that happened at that house with that family?
Yeah.
After that incident, it was let loose, and the mail lady saw it up at our mailbox.
Oh, really?
It was a domesticated wolf.
Oh, I see.
And we heard a wolf. I mean, I could tell the difference between a coyote and a wolf.
Sure.
And both my wife and I are like, and the coyotes all shut up. As soon as it howled, the coyotes shut up. They were yipping. Hey, we hear coyotes all the time.
Oh,
out
yeah.
there. I mean, we've actually seen a coyote walk right by our sliding glass door. We have 6 dogs, and they still are brave enough to walk by our door. But yeah, we heard that, and I'm not 100% sure the howl I heard, or it was howling, was my neighbor's, but it turned out my neighbor had a wolf at the same time in a pen up there. He had it hidden behind his barn.
So after this sighting, and what do you think different about the woods, or about going out or deer hunting, or just your area? Sometimes it does make people think different, but I just thought I would ask.
I do, because like my hunting blind that I have up there is made out of solid core doors, and I put a big latch on the inside of it. So when I'm sitting in my blind now, I usually have a bow, a crossbow, and I usually keep a gun with me in case I see hogs,
right?
And or a deer rifle. So you feel pretty convinced you're safe, but after seeing what I saw, I wouldn't feel safe with just a crossbow when I was near it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've thought about this, and we've spoken about this many times about just a firearm. That most of the times when people see this type of creature, and even Dave, my good buddy, when he saw his in Western Oklahoma in 2013, he just said he didn't have enough gun. He had a 223. He said, I didn't have a big enough gun. And really, it doesn't mean that these creatures are bulletproof. It just, he has hunted so much. He knows that what he had wasn't going to, if it should attack him, he wasn't going to have enough firepower to really stop this thing if it really, really wanted him. And he estimated the one he saw was about anywhere from 500 to 700 pounds. which is huge.
And this could have been that big too. I mean, I remember I was driving by, it was sitting down.
Right.
It was bigger than I am. And I'm 260, so it was at least 50, 60 pounds bigger than me easily.
Wow.
But it was narrow at the top. It wasn't to scale is what it was. That's what threw me off. It was almost like a wolf out of scale.
Well, it was like, and some people will say, well, I had read where some of the Canadian wolves, somebody started breeding the Canadian American wolf, and it's a much bigger, aggressive wolf. But even then, when I was reading about this, those wolves weren't 300 pounds. They were maybe a male, maybe might be about 180 to maybe 190, but not 300 plus pounds.
When I was a kid, my dad took me up. He worked for Bechtel on Alaskan Pipeline. So he took me up to the Bering Sea. And we stopped on the way up there on the right of way for the Alaskan Pipeline because there was an Arctic wolf. And people weren't supposed to be feeding them, but people had been feeding them. So we stopped, and this Arctic wolf came up and put its paws on the side of the Suburban we were in, begging for food. And it wasn't nearly as big as this thing. And that was the Arctic wolf. Its paws were probably like that big. Wow. Put it right on the side of the Suburban.
So that's a very good analogy too. And you've had a 150-pound Mastiff, and it still was larger, much larger. What do you think now in hearing about this Dogman creature and the size? And do you think that's what you saw?
Oh, yeah. The eyes, just the way the eyes, it wasn't normal eyes. The eyes are what threw me off. Like I said, they were penetrating eyes, and it was almost like it was telling me, "You do not see me." It's like,
wow.
That's how I felt. And that's why I turned around to make sure I saw what I saw.
Yeah.
And it wasn't there.
Wow.
But and it was good, solid eye contact. 45 miles an hour with somebody standing on the road, you can make pretty good eye contact with them. Now, it didn't turn its head and follow me, though. It just followed me with its eyes.
And it was looking at your eyes.
Straight into, it was almost looking into me, not into my eyes.
And you know what's interesting about that right there? Just that behavior. You don't see a lot of indigenous wildlife predators doing that when you're passing with a car.
No.
They don't have enough, whether you want to call it wherewithal or intellect or self-awareness, maybe is what I want to say, to look at the driver of the car. They just see the car. And usually most predators I know, and you have seen too, I shouldn't say no, but have seen when they see a car, a truck, or 4x4, they boom, they're gone. They bolt. And they're not looking at you. They just see a big mass of something that's loud that's coming, so they go. Coyotes, bobcat, mountain lion.
Now, I did have a hog between there and my house ram the side of my car. That same car, as a matter of fact, it was my dad's Buick. Right there, the house up on the hill, the A-frame that's up on the hill. I was coming home from a basketball game, my girls' basketball game, late at night. And I was kind of going faster than I should have been because I just wanted to get home. And I saw eye shine on the side of the road, and I thought it was my neighbor's dogs. And the last thing I want to do is hit one of my neighbor's dogs. So I slowed way down really fast, and it turned and it just charged me. I still have the dent in the car. It's right behind the driver's side front wheel, left a patch of hide that big.
Wow.
And I locked up my brakes, so I smoked my tires and everything. And I jumped out of my car. See, when I saw that thing, I wasn't getting out, but this was a boar. Right. I jumped out of my car with the same gun and was going to put it out of its misery. It was gone, but it,
See, hogs, that's, people don't realize that hogs, wild hogs that we have in Oklahoma and Texas, they're actually extremely smart. And they can be aggressive.
Oh yeah. With those tusks.
Oh, those cutters on them will cut you up too. And they can be aggressive. So that's why I tell people they need to have a sidearm when they go out. not necessarily for these creatures, because honestly, to see what you saw is like winning a lottery. And I don't mean to, I hate to use that analogy because it sounds like, yay, you saw, I'm seeing in many cases when people have these encounters, it's not a good thing. And I've yet to have an encounter or do an interview, I should say, in which someone was glad they saw it and they had such a warm, fuzzy, good feeling after. Usually, inevitably, these eyewitnesses state it looked like it was piercing my soul. And that is a very common statement they make.
And it didn't blink. It didn't take its eyes off me. It just stared straight at me. And I don't know,
That's bizarre.
I mean, normally if I see a bobcat, I even saw the mountain lion going across the road. I stop and try and see it as it's going through. I told you about those oryx I saw in New Mexico.
Yes.
And I literally jumped out of my truck and tried to go up the hill to get a better view of them. They had horns on them that long. But, I'm usually not intimidated by something. Now, a big boar makes me,
Yeah, but in Oklahoma, it's such a common thing. I've seen people get out on the side of the road and just start, wailing away at them because they're so prevalent. They don't want them destroying people's property or whatever. So
I've shot a lot.
I'm with you. You got to be on edge, but it's such a common thing. People go, I'm going to get out and take care of this thing right now.
Oh yeah.
Well, can you think of anything else that I didn't ask about the encounter?
No, I mean, it wasn't like a long encounter. I mean, I literally drove past it, but it still sticks. And it's kind of funny as we talk about it and stuff, I start remembering, like when you start talking about her seeing the shiny hair, I remember the hair was puffy. And I had almost forgot about the deer across the street. But that's what I was really looking at originally was the deer.
Right. And that's what I do too. I look at the deer. And so it's like, it's almost like it's a
magician sleight of hand type
yeah,
of thing.
That's what I was going to say.
Look over here as I do this over here.
And that's the way I wonder is that, our eyes are drawn to what we commonly see. And it's no big deal, but we commonly see deer and we commonly see certain animals and we go, oh, that's cool. And then how many of us have missed what is just a little bit over here or a little bit over here?
Well, your brain, you don't really see very well in your peripheral vision. So your brain compensates for that by,
exactly
guessing what you're really seeing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you again. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
Okay, guys, I just wanted to follow up with a quick summary here of Steve's roadside encounter. What did you think overall? I found it fascinating. I don't get too many in which people are driving such a slow speed and the windows are down and they're being observant. Steve was being observant because he was wanting to see the deer that are normally in that area. And again, something caught his eye. And of course, it was what he thought was a cedar tree, but in going back when he first contacted me, I remember he said that usually they cut the cedars and they grow wild out here and they're all different sizes and heights and colors and things like that sometimes. And when the cedars, they die, they put a spray on them, they'll go kind of an orangey brown. So that's why I made that image, kind of that orange color he talked about that blended in with the cedars. Cedars are an evergreen type of tree and they're usually green. But he said the cedars in that particular roadside were kind of an orangey brown, and that's why I made that image as close as I could to this orangey brown color. But he said that it stuck too close to the road, that, cedar trees, they normally cut them back away. The highway department will cut them out. And he goes, he just noticed this one stuck out. And I remember him, we didn't discuss that, but I remember him telling me that when he first contacted me. So I found that interesting. Another aspect I found was interesting is that he talked about the eyes, and eyes is a feature that a lot of people talk about over and over, how they use it. It's amazing how everybody uses the same terminology, how it pierced their soul, how it gave this evil look. It felt like it was looking inside of them. And this is statements you hear, at least I have heard over and over and over and over again, which is really, really fascinating for people to say that. So to me, what that says is that it has an intellect far beyond what we even imagine, in my mind at least, and that the eyes were red. Now, the image that I made that you saw on the show, he said the eyes were much larger than what I could get the image to create. So, but they were a little bit larger in size, and they were red, which is pretty creepy. And that's what creeped him out. He said it gave him the willies, and that he wasn't going to get outside. It was way too big. And I just think about what Wiley Dave, what he estimated his DOGMAN around let's just say, he said between 500 and 700 pounds. Let's say 550. Let's just call it 550 or 600. So, if it was that, and Steve was just guesstimating at 300 plus. So that's huge, people. That's huge. So yeah, I don't blame him for not getting out. How did you like some of the video that I showed? Do you like the maps and kind of the location? I've been doing some Google Earth maps for you guys. That way you kind of get a mind's eye of what's going on. What else that was interesting in there? I thought it was interesting that he said that it only moved its eyes. It kind of moved its head a little bit, but not much. He said it was just looking at him the whole time. It had this self-awareness not to move its body, but to move its eyes. It was that close to the road. Who knows how many people had passed by thinking it was a cedar tree? And like Steve said, I can't even imagine. Can you imagine being on a bike? A lot of people, we get a lot of cyclists out here, being on a bicycle, going up and down those hills, or being a runner. Now, that road doesn't have a shoulder to it, so I can't imagine, but that would freak me out. Running alongside the road and you see something that large that's taller than you sitting down. Yeah, that's pretty creepy. And we do have people that run that road every once in a while. I'll see them. I don't travel that road a lot, but I have seen them. So yeah, give me your input. Let me know what you thought. This was a great encounter. Steve, he said, he's never seen anything like this. He knew a little bit about DOGMAN and Sasquatch and cryptids and stuff, just of general interest, but he never thought he would see one. And so, you heard, it puts a different perspective on things when you see one. And thank goodness it wasn't an aggressive encounter or anything like that. Mainly because he had his car as kind of a shield to protect him. But his windows were down and he felt a little vulnerable, you could say, too. So, guys, I appreciate you so much. Like I said in the very beginning, help me get to that subscriber goal, and I'll take care of you guys, too. Give me your input, what you think. Always stay safe out there, and always remember, you're never alone when in the wilderness. Take care.